want to share something with you that took me years, decades to truly understand. Something that I learned not from books, not from seminars, not from mentors, but from life itself. It's a principle so simple that most people ignore it, yet so powerful that it can decide whether your future grows or collapses. And that principle is this: never tell people your plans before the work is done. Never expose your intentions before they have taken shape, because nothing weakens a vision faster than the wrong audience hearing it too early. When I was a younger man, filled with excitement and ambition, I made a mistake that many people still make today. I believed that if I spoke loudly about my goals, if I shared them with everyone around me, somehow that would make me more committed. I believed that telling others made my dreams real. But the truth, which I discovered painfully and slowly, is that sharing your plans too soon creates an illusion of accomplishment that steals your fire instead of fueling it. Your mind celebrates the announcement instead of the achievement, and celebration without progress is a thief. It steals your hunger and replaces it with a false sense of satisfaction. I remember the early days when I got my first big idea. I was excited, motivated, ready to turn my life around. And like many people, I ran to the nearest person and said, "Here's what I'm going to do." I talked about it with friends, coworkers, even people who didn't care. And what did I get? Doubt, questions, warnings, laughter. Not because they were bad people, but because they were not the right audience for my vision. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel what I felt. They could not imagine what I imagined. And their words, sometimes small, careless words, began to shape my confidence without my permission. One person would say, "That sounds difficult." Another would ask, "What if it fails?" Someone else might laugh and say, "I don't think that's realistic." And little by little, without noticing, I began shrinking my dreams to match their understanding. I reduced my plans so they would look reasonable in their eyes. And I didn't realize it then. But every time I explained my vision to someone who couldn't understand it, I was weakening myself. I was giving away the power I desperately needed for action. Your plan is a seed, and seeds grow best when they are underground, protected, quiet, hidden. If you expose the seed too early to the wrong climate, it dies. If you expose your plan too early to the wrong people, it becomes fragile. People will judge it before it grows. People will doubt it before it becomes real. People will criticize it before they even understand it. And sometimes their doubt becomes your doubt. Their fear becomes your hesitation. Their limitations become your boundaries. The world is full of doubters, distractors, and dream killers. Not always intentionally, but their words have weight. And sometimes a single doubtful sentence can destroy a plan that needed silence to survive. I learned that my dreams didn't need applause. They needed privacy. They didn't need validation. They needed discipline. They didn't need exposure. They needed quiet work done consistently, day after day. One of the most dangerous things you can do is talk about your goals before you've taken even the first step, because the brain treats talk as action. You tell someone, "I'm going to start a business," and suddenly you feel good, too good. Your mind releases chemicals that mimic accomplishment. You enjoy the praise, you enjoy the attention, and you mistake that pleasure for progress. But when the time comes to actually do the work, the fire is no longer there. You already felt the reward without earning it, and anything earned without effort is poison to ambition. I remember a turning point in my life when I decided to try something different. I made a plan quietly. I didn't tell anyone. Not my colleagues, not my neighbors, not even the closest people around me. I kept it in my journal. I kept it in my heart. I worked on it early in the morning before anyone knew I was awake. I worked on it late at night when the world was asleep. And for the first time in my life, I felt something powerful. I felt free. Free from judgment. Free from opinions. Free from expectations. Free from the pressure to impress anyone. The only responsibility I felt was the responsibility to myself. Silence sharpens focus. Silence eliminates distraction. Silence forces you to rely on discipline instead of external motivation. When no one knows what you're doing, you become the only one who can push yourself forward. And that internal pressure, pure, personal pressure, is the strongest fuel you will ever experience. When you work in silence, you stop chasing validation and start chasing results. You stop performing for the world and start performing for your future. You stop talking about what you will do and start becoming the person capable of doing it. I became more productive, more disciplined, more consistent, not because I was working harder, but because I stopped leaking energy through unnecessary conversations. I stopped explaining. I stopped defending. I stopped trying to convince other people to believe in something they were never meant to understand. I learned to trust the process, the quiet process that demands patience but gives power in return. Eventually, when the results started to appear, slowly, then suddenly, people noticed. They said, "How did you do it?" They said, "Why didn't you tell us?" And that's the beauty of silence. People see your results long before they ever hear your plans. You see, after that painful realization that life does not improve by chance, it improves by change, I woke up the next morning with a different fire inside me. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was steady. And sometimes a steady flame lasts longer than a roaring one. I decided that my life would no longer be governed by excuses, but by responsibility. And that single decision changed everything for me. But here's what most people misunderstand. Change doesn't start on the outside. It starts quietly in the conversations you have with yourself. And that morning, I had one of the most honest conversations of my life. I asked myself, Jim, what if you simply gave your best for the next 30 days? Not the next 30 years. Just 30 days. What if you committed to becoming the kind of person you always imagined? And that was the beginning of my 30-day transformation, one that eventually shaped the way I think, speak, act, and live. Now let me tell you straight, discipline was not something I was born with. In fact, I used to run from it. I thought discipline was a burden. But then I discovered something powerful. Discipline weighs ounces, while regret weighs tons. And even though discipline was uncomfortable, regret was unbearable. So I chose the lighter load. And when I made that choice, life began to shift. The first thing I fixed was my morning routine. I used to wake up whenever I wanted. No structure, no purpose, no urgency. But I learned quickly that a scattered morning leads to a scattered life. So I started waking up earlier, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. I would sit in silence, reflect on my goals, and remind myself of the price of staying the same. And the truth is, when you stare at your future long enough, your past loses its power. Every morning I asked myself 3 questions. Who am I becoming? What am I avoiding? And what am I willing to do today that my future self will thank me for? These questions were not comfortable, but growth never happens inside comfort. And let me tell you a secret. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. You just need to change your direction. When a plane shifts by even 1 degree, it ends up in a completely different destination. Your life works the same way. A small decision today could put you on an entirely new path tomorrow. During these early days of change, I also realized something that became one of my most important philosophies. Success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become. If your character improves, your results improve. If your habits improve, your life improves. If your mindset improves, your income improves. You don't chase success. Success comes looking for you. And I learned this the hard way because for years I chased opportunities without improving myself. I knocked on doors that weren't meant for the man I was at the time. The moment I became better, those same doors opened on their own. You see, life does not give you what you want. Life gives you what you deserve. And you deserve what you become. One of the biggest breakthroughs in my journey came when I realized that every life lesson has an entry fee. You pay for it one way or another. through discipline or through regret. And trust me, the cost of regret is always higher. Around this time, I had to confront one of my deepest weaknesses: procrastination. I used to delay everything. My dreams, my goals, my responsibilities. I told myself I'd start next week or next month. But eventually I realized that later is the enemy of progress. Later is where dreams go to die. So I made a rule for myself. If something needs to be done and I can do it now, I do it now. And that simple rule saved me from years of wasted time. Another major shift happened when I started reading. When I was young, I didn't understand the power of books. But once I picked up my first truly meaningful book, I realized that reading is like borrowing someone else's brain for a moment. You get to climb the mountain they already climbed, so you don't have to repeat their mistakes. Books became my mentors. They helped me reshape my thinking, my vision, and my standards. I discovered that the difference between where you are and where you want to be is often hidden in the books you haven't read yet. And throughout those early months, I read everything I could get my hands on: philosophy, business, psychology, communication, motivation. And the more I learned, the more I changed. But I want you to understand something important. Change is not always visible at first. Sometimes you work quietly for months, even years, before the results announce themselves. That's why most people give up. They want instant progress. They want visible transformation. But personal growth works like planting a seed. You water it, nurture it, protect it, and for a long time, nothing seems to happen. But underground, something extraordinary is taking place. And one day, the seed breaks the soil, and everyone thinks it happened suddenly. But you know better. You know the work that was done in silence. During my transformation, I also started paying attention to the people around me, because your environment shapes your energy. I realized that I had surrounded myself with people who complained, people with small goals, people who were committed to staying the same. And I understood that if I wanted a bigger life, I had to step into bigger circles. So I distanced myself from negativity and gravitated toward people who inspired me, because your life will always rise to the level of your associations. And slowly, something beautiful happened. I started becoming proud of myself. Not because I achieved success yet, but because I was finally becoming the man I knew I could be. And that feeling, becoming proud of your own effort, is the foundation of real confidence. My transformation wasn't perfect. I stumbled, I doubted, I struggled. But every mistake taught me something. Every setback redirected me. And every small win pushed me forward. And that brings us to the final lesson of this part. You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction right now. And direction is everything. You know, there is one thing I've learned that most people never understand. It's not about motivation, it's not about luck, and it's definitely not about waiting for the right moment. It's about quiet power, relentless focus, and mastering yourself before you reveal anything to the world. The moment you let the wrong people into your plans, you give away energy you can never get back. And that energy is your momentum. That momentum is your future. And once it's gone, it takes months, sometimes years to rebuild. When I decided to change my life, I didn't just make a list of goals. I made a decision to change my daily habits, my inner dialogue, and my environment. I started noticing something immediately. The people around me, even those I loved and respected, were subtly holding me back. Not because they wanted to, but because they couldn't see the world I was imagining. And here's the kicker. Their disbelief started infecting me if I let it. Every comment, every question, every small doubt began to chip away at my confidence. So I made a rule. I told myself, I will not share my plans until they are unshakable. Until I have built something real, something undeniable. Until I can walk into any room and let the results speak louder than words. I became obsessed, not with recognition, not with approval, but with becoming the person capable of making my plans real. Here's the truth. Most people are addicted to the idea of looking busy, of telling everyone what they will do. They think sharing makes them accountable, but in reality, it does the exact opposite. Every time you tell someone, I'm going to start this project, or I'm going to do that. Your brain releases a small dopamine hit. You feel a fake sense of accomplishment. You feel proud. You feel motivated, but you haven't done a single thing yet. That dopamine is a trick. It's a thief. And if you're not careful, it will steal your drive before the work even begins. I remember those early days waking up before the sun, working while the world was asleep, pouring myself into every small action without saying a word. I wasn't looking for validation. I wasn't seeking applause. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. And that's when the magic happened. I realized that freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about removing the noise and focusing on what truly matters. Silence became my weapon. Not just quiet, but intentional silence. No explanations, no excuses, no defending my vision to those who couldn't understand it. I began to notice a remarkable thing. The more I kept my energy to myself, the faster I grew. Without the burden of others' opinions, I could push harder, think clearer, and act bolder. And here's a hard truth most people never face. Discipline is not built in comfort. Comfort is a trap. The easier your life feels, the less you grow. I used to avoid discipline. I used to resist structure. But then I realized that discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. And I made a choice. I will take the lighter load of discipline every time, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. The first thing I attacked was my mornings. I used to wake up late, groggy, distracted. But then I started waking up early before the world demanded anything from me. I spent those early hours planning, reflecting, and working in silence. I asked myself questions no one else was going to ask. Who am I becoming today? What am I avoiding? What will I do today that my future self will thank me for? These questions weren't easy. They forced me to face my excuses. They forced me to confront my fears. But the more I answered them honestly, the more I felt a strange but powerful sense of control. Control over my time. Control over my actions. Control over my future. And with control came momentum. And with momentum came results. Small at first, almost invisible, but undeniable if you keep at it. Then I tackled procrastination. I realized that later was the enemy of progress. Every postponed task, every delayed decision was a tiny death of my future potential. So I made a rule. If it can be done today, do it today. No excuses, no delays. No waiting for motivation. Just action. And slowly, over days, weeks, and months, I began to see my life shift. Little wins started stacking. Confidence grew. My mind stopped seeking validation from others because I was validating myself with consistent action. Another breakthrough came when I understood the power of environment. You are not just the sum of your thoughts. You are the sum of the people, places, and influences around you. I had surrounded myself with people who had small visions, who doubted themselves, who doubted me, and every interaction subtly reinforced limits I didn't deserve. So I made a conscious decision. I moved closer to people who inspired me, who worked hard, who dreamed bigger. And when you surround yourself with high energy, growth-oriented individuals, something remarkable happens. You rise naturally to their level. Books became my secret mentors. I read everything I could: philosophy, psychology, communication, entrepreneurship, self-discipline, and each book taught me what years of trial and error would have cost me. I realized that reading is borrowing someone else's experience to fast-track your growth. Every page, every lesson quietly reshaped my thinking. Every time I applied one idea, my results shifted imperceptibly at first, but then dramatically over time. And here's the part most people miss. Transformation is silent before it's visible. You can work for months or even years and see nothing on the outside. But underground, something extraordinary is happening. Your habits, your mindset, your focus, your discipline, they're all growing roots. And one day results emerge suddenly, as if by magic. But it's not magic. It's the silent, consistent work no one sees. I also learned the difference between effort and growth. I wasn't just working harder, I was working smarter. I learned to measure progress by how I was evolving as a person, not by the immediate results. The more I improved internally, the more opportunities appeared externally. Doors that were previously closed suddenly opened. And I realized success doesn't come to those who chase it. It comes to those who become the person worthy of it. Finally, I realized that every life lesson has a price. You pay through discipline or through regret. You can pay now with hard work, early mornings, silent focus, and relentless action, or pay later with frustration, wasted time, and lost potential. And believe me, the later payment is far more painful. This part of my journey taught me one thing above all. Your life changes not when you talk about your plans, but when you act in silence, consistently, relentlessly, and with purpose. Your inner world becomes strong before your outer world reflects it, and the results will come, not as a favor, not as luck, but as a natural consequence of the person you've become. So here's my challenge to you. Start today. Protect your energy. Guard your plans. Work silently. Master your habits. Build discipline. Surround yourself with growth. Read, learn, apply, repeat. Small, consistent actions are what separate dreamers from achievers. And remember, your results will speak before you ever have to explain your efforts to anyone. The fire is within you, but it grows strongest in the quiet, away from the distractions, away from the doubters, away from the applause. Let your work speak. Let your life show the transformation. And most importantly, trust the process, because the person you are becoming today will create the results you will see tomorrow. And that is the power of silent, focused, relentless action. Here's the reality most people never face. Success is not about luck, timing, or waiting for permission. It's about becoming the person who deserves the success, and then letting that success find you. And the truth? That transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens quietly, with small, deliberate steps, repeated relentlessly until they form habits. And once habits form, your results no longer depend on motivation, they depend on momentum. I remember the early days of my transformation vividly. I used to wake up and immediately feel the weight of distraction. Notifications, opinions, noise, doubt. Everywhere I looked, there were things trying to pull my attention away from what truly mattered. And here's the hard lesson. Every second you spend explaining yourself or defending your vision to the wrong people is a second stolen from your progress. That energy, it's gone forever, and you can never get back lost energy. So I made a commitment. I would protect my energy, guard my focus, and work in silence until the results spoke for themselves. I started keeping a strict journal of my actions, my thoughts, and my small wins. Each morning, I would write down not just what I wanted to achieve, but how I wanted to feel, who I wanted to become, and the kind of person my future self would thank me for being. This simple habit changed everything. My focus sharpened. My actions aligned with my vision, and slowly, a pattern emerged. The more I invested in myself privately, the faster my progress became visible externally. And here's what most people don't realize. Success is attracted, not chased. You don't chase recognition. You don't chase applause. You don't chase validation. You chase growth. You chase becoming the person capable of creating extraordinary results. And when you do that, doors start opening that you didn't even know existed. Opportunities appear, almost magically, but only because you've become someone worthy of them. During this period, I also discovered the importance of tracking energy and influence. I began observing who and what was draining me, and who and what was amplifying my growth. I realized that just being around negative people, even casually, had a subtle but powerful effect on my mindset. Their doubts seeped in like a silent toxin, shaping my self-belief without me even noticing. That's when I made a rule: limit exposure to negativity and maximize exposure to inspiration. Surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, who think bigger than you think, and who challenge you to rise. Your environment shapes your energy more than any motivational speech or book ever could. And speaking of books, they became my secret weapon. Each book I read was like borrowing someone else's brain for a moment. I could climb mountains they had already climbed, avoiding the pitfalls they had suffered. Philosophy taught me perspective. Psychology taught me behavior and decision-making. Business taught me strategy. Communication taught me influence. And self-discipline taught me control. With each lesson, I was reshaping my mindset, upgrading my internal software, and silently becoming someone who could achieve what I once thought impossible. Here's the thing most people misunderstand. Change is invisible at first. You might work for months, even years, and see nothing on the surface. Your friends might question you. Your family might doubt you, and the world might scoff. But below the surface, habits are forming, mindset is shifting, discipline is growing, and your future self is being built, brick by brick. And one day, it all emerges suddenly, and people assume it happened overnight. But you know the truth. You know the hours, the silent effort, and the relentless focus that created it. During this phase, I also tackled one of the most subtle enemies of growth, comparison. I used to measure my progress against others. I would scroll, watch, and feel envy creeping in. But then I realized that comparison is a waste of energy. It distracts you from your own path and steals your focus. So I made a choice. I would only measure myself against my yesterday, my growth, and my discipline. And once I made that shift, I noticed an incredible thing. My confidence skyrocketed. I wasn't distracted by what others were doing, because I was too busy building my own future. And then came the next realization. Action without reflection is wasted effort. I started taking time each week to review my progress, my failures, my small wins, and my mindset. I asked myself brutally honest questions. What went well? What didn't? Where did I waste energy? Where did I excel? What can I do differently next week? This weekly reflection became a compass, keeping me aligned with my vision and forcing me to correct course before mistakes compounded. But here's the part most people fail to understand. Momentum is more powerful than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Inspiration fades. But momentum, that unstoppable force built through consistent action, discipline and focus, cannot be ignored. Momentum keeps you moving even when you don't feel like it. Momentum carries you through doubt, fatigue, and fear. And every small, consistent step compounds until it produces results you never thought possible. And speaking of fear, I had to confront it head on. Fear isn't just the big things. Fear is in small decisions, in hesitation, in procrastination. I realized that fear only grows if you feed it with inaction. So I developed a simple rule. Act immediately on what scares you, or it will continue to grow. The first time I applied this, the fear didn't disappear, but it became manageable. The second time I felt stronger, and over time I started embracing challenges that once paralyzed me, turning fear into fuel. Another turning point came when I understood the power of identity. I stopped saying, I want to be successful, and started saying, I am the type of person who gets things done. I stopped saying, I will try, and started saying, I commit, and I take action consistently. When you upgrade your identity, your actions automatically upgrade. Your habits improve. Your focus improves. Your results improve. And suddenly you're not chasing a goal. You are becoming the goal. And here's a subtle, critical insight. Patience is not passive. It's active trust in the process. I learned to be patient without being complacent. I learned to act daily, relentlessly, without needing immediate recognition or visible results. I learned that the universe rewards consistent, disciplined effort more than flashy displays of intention. And every small, patient step accumulated into a wave of unstoppable progress. Finally, I realized one of the most liberating truths. Your life will reflect the person you become, not the plans you make. You can plan endlessly, share your dreams with everyone, and hope for validation. But until you grow internally, your plans will remain just that, plans. Results only manifest when you become the person capable of producing them. And once that happens, the world bends toward you. Doors open, opportunities appear, recognition follows naturally. And you don't have to shout about your intentions, your results do the talking. So here's the challenge I want to leave with you today. Start building yourself quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Guard your energy. Work in silence. Surround yourself with the right people. Read, reflect, apply, and repeat. Let the world see your transformation long before it hears your plans. Become unstoppable in private, and unstoppable in public will follow. Because at the end of the day, the person you are becoming today will shape every result you see tomorrow. And that is the quiet, relentless power of disciplined action, focus, and invisible transformation. Here's the truth that most people avoid admitting. Your biggest results come from what nobody else sees. The long hours when the world is asleep. The moments when no one applauds. The countless small actions you take that feel invisible. They are building the foundation for your success. And here's the secret. Those who quit early, those who constantly seek validation, will never experience this power. Only those willing to embrace invisible, relentless effort will rise. During this final phase of my transformation, I began to see patterns in the lives of successful people. Every single one of them had one thing in common. They mastered themselves before expecting the world to reward them. They didn't wait for luck, recognition, or a perfect opportunity. They didn't complain about unfair circumstances. They honed their discipline, refined their habits, and controlled their mindset. And over time, the results followed naturally. I realized something critical about my own journey. Every person I was yesterday shapes the limits of what I can achieve tomorrow. If I allowed doubt, distraction, and laziness to dominate my past, my future would remain limited. But if I consistently invested in growth, my potential expanded beyond what I thought was possible. This is why personal transformation always starts internally. You cannot change your external world without first changing the software of your mind. So I doubled down on two essential areas: habits and environment. My habits became my armor. Each morning, I woke early, meditated, reflected, and planned my actions. Each night, I reviewed my wins and losses, adjusting the next day's plan accordingly. Habits weren't just routines. They became my identity. And identity is everything. When you identify as someone who takes action, who follows through, and who never relies on motivation alone, your results inevitably transform. Environment, on the other hand, was my invisible accelerator. I began analyzing the people, places, and media I consumed. I cut ties with anyone who consistently brought negativity, doubt, or distraction into my life. Instead, I gravitated toward those who inspired, challenged, and pushed me to grow. I realized something profound. You rise to the level of your associations. If you want a bigger life, you must step into bigger circles. And if those circles don't exist yet, create them. Seek mentors, read, network, and surround yourself with people who embody the success you aspire to achieve. As I strengthened my habits and curated my environment, another critical truth emerged. Discipline compounds faster than motivation. Motivation is fleeting. Inspiration fades. But discipline, practiced consistently, accumulates quietly, invisibly, and eventually explodes into visible results. I committed to doing what needed to be done every single day, regardless of how I felt. Some days were harder than others. Some days I was tired, distracted, or afraid, but each action, however small, was a deposit into the bank of my future success. And then I discovered something even more powerful: small. Consistent actions create momentum that feels unstoppable. When you take a single step consistently, it becomes easier to take the next step. And before you know it, your entire trajectory has shifted. This is why incremental change matters more than grand gestures. A plane may shift direction by just 1 degree, but that small change can result in a completely different destination. Your life works the same way. The daily choices you make, though seemingly insignificant, determine the trajectory of your entire future. Another revelation struck me. Failure is not the enemy, it's the teacher. Every setback, every mistake, every misstep is a data point. Ignore it and you repeat the error. Study it, learn from it, and adjust. and it becomes a stepping stone. I stopped fearing failure. I stopped avoiding discomfort. I began leaning into it, knowing that growth always lives on the other side of fear. The moment I embraced this mindset, I began to see failures not as threats, but as opportunities to improve, adapt, and dominate. At this stage, I also learned the importance of patience with process and impatience with excuses. Many people claim they want change, but they want it on their schedule, with visible results immediately. That's not how transformation works. Growth takes time. Patience allows the system you've built, habits, mindset, focus, and environment to compound. Impatience with excuses ensures you take action every day instead of procrastinating. Do not confuse waiting with preparation. Action is always required. And here's the final principle that transformed everything for me. Your results are a mirror of who you are becoming, not who you were yesterday. Your circumstances, your external opportunities, and even your luck are secondary. The primary determinant of your outcomes is the person you are. Cultivating internally, when you become disciplined, focused, resilient, and relentlessly consistent, the world responds accordingly. Doors open, opportunities appear, recognition follows naturally, and you no longer need to broadcast your plans. Your results speak louder than words ever could. By the time I reached this stage, I wasn't the same person who had once broadcast his dreams prematurely. I had learned to work in silence, protect my energy, and trust the invisible process. I had developed habits that made success inevitable. I had created an environment that amplified growth. I had cultivated patience, embraced failure, and built unstoppable momentum. And most importantly, I had transformed my identity. I was no longer someone who chased success. I had become someone success couldn't ignore. And so, here's the challenge I want to leave with you today. Stop broadcasting your intentions. Stop seeking validation. Stop waiting for permission. Start building yourself quietly, deliberately, and relentlessly. Protect your energy. Strengthen your habits. Surround yourself with the right influences. Take action daily, no matter how small. Lean into discomfort. Learn from failure. And most importantly, become the kind of person who produces results, no matter what anyone else thinks or says. Because at the end of the day, the person you are becoming in private determines every result you will see in public. And that is the ultimate invisible power, the quiet mastery of self, the relentless pursuit of improvement, and the unstoppable momentum that results from disciplined action.